So if the settlement date and the transaction date are different, right? If we all of a sudden are, you know, we're not dealing with the most up to date, if you will, item. So what do we do with that revaluation gain or loss? Well, let's go back over to our broad transactions. Let's take a look at foreign currency transactions. We took a look at what was the recognition criterion. Let's look at the initial measurement, right? And at the date the foreign currency transaction is recognized, each asset, liability, or loss arising from the transaction shall be measured in the foreign currency of the recording entity by use of the exchange rate in effect at that date. All right, so now we have to start thinking, well, what is an exchange rate? All right, so an exchange rate is for a dollar, how many euros do I get for that dollar? Or for pesos, etc. So really it is the conversion, and if you've ever done any kind of international travel, you know that the Canadian dollar is roughly 72, 73 cents for every US dollar. And say the British pound is for every dollar, I only get a smaller portion of a British pound, right? So and same thing, I haven't looked at the euro rates. So you always have to look and see, do I get more buying power going to one currency versus do I get less buying power going to a different currency? So we've got to look at exchange rates. One thing that just to note here, sometimes you're dealing in a currency that is not always trading. If there's an active market in the currency, then there should always be an exchange rate that exists. But sometimes the exchangeability between the two currencies might be temporarily unavailable. Well, the next date where there is an exchange rate, that's the one you should ultimately use. So this is your initial measurement. Let's go back to foreign currency transactions. Let's see what happens in subsequent measurements. So what happens in subsequent measurements, right, is if between the time I do the transaction and the time that I am putting together my balance sheet, any kind of change in the exchange rates has to be included in net income for the period where the exchange rate changes, right? So we have to focus on understanding that we're going to engage in this transaction at exchange rate at that date. When I get to the balance sheet date, the exchange rate may change. So any increases or decreases in the expected amount of functional currency that I'm going to get relative to the foreign currency, that all has to go through net income. Because when I settle it, that's also, if there's a change in the exchange rate, that is also going to go through net income, right? And we'll show a few transactions. We'll go through a number of different transactions, which will act a little bit of as a review for some of your other, for the previous two courses that you took. So again, we're just talking about foreign currency transactions, and what do you do with foreign currency transactions where the foreign currency is not your functional currency? Everything has to be recorded in the functional currency.